Alright, in this video we're going to try and connect the prosport wideband to Nistune. So we have the prosport wideband controller right here. One of these wires goes to the sensor, one goes to power, one goes to the gauge, and one of them is a analog output. So we just have three wires here. Analog output, black is the ground, brown is the wideband analog output. So this will be connecting to the DLP A converter and then into Nistune. And then the green is the narrowband output. So we're gonna try and connect this back into the existing sensor connector so that we can get closed loop O2 feedback, and hopefully that can assist us in dialing in our K values and injection latency times. Alright, you just want to make sure you use some decent crimpers because some of the other wiring I've done has not turned out great. Had to redo some of it because I was using those yellow handled Harbor Freight crimpers. It didn't turn out too good. So right now I'm just extending this ground.
With a little splice.
Now we'll look into the green wire, which is the narrowband output. So I'm going to connect a wire to this, run it through the firewall where I have everything else running through, and then connect it to the existing O2 connector. Alright, I was able to just stick that green wire through the hole in the firewall there because I've already made an opening for all the other wires, so it wasn't too hard to poke through, and just pulled it through a little bit on the engine bay side.
Alright, so then green to green, luckily I found a green wire. Alright, so green wire connected, wire going through the firewall. Let's go check the connector.
Alright, this is our O2 connector. We have the 3-pin O2 sensor. I'm not sure if that's the titania or zirconia one, but you can see it just comes off the main harness right here, right about where the throttle body is. Usually it goes all the way down there, but I'm going to bring it back up right around here. And then I did find out that the signal wire is actually the middle black wire. I did try and look at the wiring diagram, but I did not know, guess I didn't know how to read it properly. I think one is actually ground to the ECU and the other one is signal to the ECU. So I'm gonna just put a some type of little pin or something in here just so I can put the pin with the wire in there like that and just run it like that.
And we're just going to be janky with it and use this little thing. Hopefully it fits in here. In the middle pin. Just barely. Let me turn this up a little bit. See if we can get this just in there like that. So we're just going to run it like that for now. I might put a little zip tie right there. Right in there. A little something like that. Just to get a narrowband O2 signal to the Nistune ECU.
Alright, so now we have what I believe is called a DLP A converter. This is a USB connector, and it has inputs that you can use to read voltage. Alright, we're in the Nistune owner's manual here, user's manual, whatever. I thought there was something that said to connect the wideband reference voltage to a specific port in the DLP converter right here, but I don't think that may be the case. If we look down, it just says connect and just input the values or whatever. So I think I'm just going to try and put it into aux 1 and then we'll see if it shows up. Down is the wideband reference signal.
Alright, so we're going to put this in here right there. That's good.
Alright, for the connections, we've got this kind of green and brown wire going to the brown wire coming out of the prosport controller. That is the wideband output, and then this white wire I've actually got rigged up to this black wire that goes to the ground on the prosport output. So you do need the voltage signal connected to port 1 on the board, and you do need the ground connected to the board. This is a 5-volt supply if you're running a different type of sensor, which isn't needed. I have also heard that it may be a good idea to ground this ground point to the chassis as well. There may be some issues with noise on the wires when the radio is playing or any other type of interference. So I've heard that you may need to ground this to the chassis or use some type of little filters or something on your wires. Alright, let's see what happens. Okay, we got error code 2 on the wideband. Error code 2 on the prosport gauge was just calibrating. So we do have voltage there. Alright, let's see if we can connect to Nistune. Consult to connect. Oh, we got the wideband page open. Consult to connect. We do connect to Nistune. Our O2 voltage. This is our narrowband O2 input from the sensor. So 0 volts, that may be because the engine is off. Let's see if we can connect the wideband. So we'll go to File, Configuration, Wideband Settings. We have the drop-down boxes where you can select which wideband you have, or if you're using the DLP A converter like we are. I believe some of the widebands have a USB already connected to their processor or whatever, and their own software that you can connect to. But let's take a look at this graph and see if it matches up with the prosport numbers. Okay, finding the drivers for the DLP AD converter was not as easy as I thought it would be. I believe they're actually called D2XX drivers. So I just searched that in Google, came up to here. This has the D2XX drivers, and if you scroll down, all the way down, these are actually the drivers we're looking for. These are the drivers I'm looking for on Windows 64-bit. These are just the files, I believe, but if you go over here to the right side, this is a setup executable. So you'll download this, click this, it downloads, and then that goes to a setup wizard. Open that, quick little setup, just go through this little setup, yes, and you just go through this and it will install the drivers. Now in the device manager, before I did see the DLP IO8-G in other devices, but after the driver install, it's under ports, serial port COM3, I believe it's in the 3rd USB port. It's only USB 2.0 compatible, not 3.0 compatible. So we'll exit out of here, and now in Nistune, under the ports, we have the COM3 USB serial port for the DLP AD converter. So I believe that's what we had to do to get the drivers installed. So now let's just click OK and see. Well, of course, nothing's going to show up. Now we're back in the car. Got Nistune up. Key is on, ignition off. We do have the consult cable connected, the DLP USB connected. We will go ahead and consult with the ECU. We're connected, and we will click the wideband. And so now we are showing voltages. Aux 1 showing at 0 volts. So I believe that either it's working and everything's off, or it's not working at all. So let's just see if we start the car, if anything happens. The values have not been updated in the tables to display an accurate AFR. Just doing this to see if we get any voltage, then we'll go back and adjust everything. All right, so we are getting readings. So let's go ahead and adjust these values, and then we'll see if we get accurate wideband readings. Okay, so we're gonna go back to File, Configuration, Wideband Settings, and then I believe on the left side in this chart is our voltages, and then on the right side would be our air-fuel ratios. So prosport did offer a chart with their wideband with all the voltages and AFRs. So I'm going to go in and start putting these voltages in and the corresponding AFRs, and we'll see how it comes out. Alright, not quite sure where I left off, but things weren't working, so did a little investigating. So when I first plugged in the DLP device here, it showed up in other devices with the actual DLP name and the part number, the I08-G or whatever it is, in the other devices with the little exclamation point next to it, meaning that the drivers were not installed. After that setup wizard, the setup wizard actually assigned it to be the USB serial port in COM3, and that is what you need in order for it to communicate properly with Nistune. So I thought I might have had an issue there with maybe the incorrect drivers, but I do have everything working now, so let's go back over and see what I did wrong. So we've got ignition on. We'll go ahead and click console to connect to the ECU. I believe I did read in one of the old forums that it is recommended that you consult to the ECU before you connect to the wideband. And then as far as the setup for the wideband, you go up here, top left file, then down to configuration. One important thing right here is the wideband lookup. We're going to be sticking to the left-hand side. They do have a right-hand side in case you're running dual widebands, but we'll just stay with the left-hand side. So you want to make sure this is the correct file path where all the CSV files are stored. So when Nistune downloads, I believe under Documents, it has a Nistune folder. Under the Nistune folder, there is a wideband folder. And in the wideband folder, this is the DLP AD converter, and this is where it holds the table files to get the proper AFR based on voltage. So you do want to make sure that's correct and it's not in the operating files or the system files or anything. I did see there's one issue there. Come over to wideband settings tab. So this should all be selected like this. We're using the DLP AD converter. The COM3 USB serial port has already been assigned in Device Manager through the driver install setup. This is where I messed up right here on the channel. So right now it's listed as AUX1, so this may be incorrect. We need to be down on AFR1. So if you notice, there's only 6 auxiliary inputs when there are, I believe, 8 on the DLP board. So you have the 5 volt, 1, 2, 3, 4 on this side, 5, 6, 7, 8, and then ground. So what it does is it actually lists this number 1 port as AFR1 as opposed to AUX1. So we need to select AFR1. So this didn't save from last time, but we'll go ahead and import the correct, what is it, CV something file. So you can see this PC documents Nistune wideband. This is the file path we're in. This is what we just set in the settings. DLP converter, CSV files. So these are actually just notepad files. Let's take a look at one real quick. So in Documents, Nistune, let's go to Wideband, and then DLP AD Converter. It actually turns out that the AEM sensor has the exact same chart as my prosport wideband. So we'll take a look at this, and you just open all these up in Notepad, and this is what it is. It's just a table separated by commas and the enter key, and if you look, it is in the proper units. I believe this is millivolts, so that is 160 millivolts equals 10.32 AFR. And if we look on the sheet, can't see anything there. If we look on the sheet, so this is 0.16 volts or 160 millivolts, 10.32. And I did go ahead and check all the rest of them are close to it, and this is the correct chart. So that's what that is. If you need to adjust for maybe like a boost sensor or something. You can go in and make your own table, or I'm not sure if you can adjust it actually in Nistune right here and it will save. This is an issue I've been having. So we'll go ahead and select the AEM, and you can see it autofill in the chart right here, and we'll click OK. Then we'll go up here to the wideband button, click the wideband, and you can see we are connected now. 19.97, I believe that's the highest it reads. We're 20 on the AFR now. On the gauge, gonna go ahead and start it real quick and see what they look like. So as you can see, we are close on the gauge and the wideband on the Nistune, and we also do have the narrowband O2 connected as well, so we can get our fuel trim short and fuel trim long to try and help dial in this tune. But that is the connection of the wideband and the narrowband O2 to Nistune and the ECU. So what I found is Nistune only accesses the files you have over here for the table. So just importing a different CSV file while you're under, say, AFR1 will not change the table. In order to change the table, you actually have to go into the file path and select AFR1. Now this is not what AFR1 was to begin with. It was something different. I think it's 0 equals 8 and 5 equals 32. So let's go ahead and change this back. So we're gonna Control A, we're gonna label this test and enter. We'll say 0 millivolts equals 8, I think is what it was before, and 5,000 millivolts or 5 volts will equal 32. And then we will file, save. So now if we exit out of this, let's see if we can just go here without closing Nistune. So now when we select AFR1, it just accesses AFR1 CSV file. It doesn't say, you can't save any other of these files to Nistune just using the drop-down box. So in order to actually change AFR1, we have to open up AFR1, and let's see, you can see my test right there. So let's change this back, and because the AEM gauge is the exact same, I'm going to Control A, Control C to copy, and then we'll exit out of that. Make sure we don't have another. We do. This is AFR1 in Notepad. So we will select Control A and then Control V for paste, and we will save this as the AFR1 file. Save. We'll exit out of this in Nistune. So now when we go to File Configuration, Wideband Settings, and go down here to AFR1, it's accessing this AFR1 CSV file in the file path. And you can see nothing changed on the table because I think I did change the aux1 table. But going to AFR1, which is actually port 1 on the DLP board, we do have the correct chart saved. So now it is saved. That was a lot more work to figure out than I thought it would be, but we got it.